Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the game room. I am your host, Paul Benjamin from Apex Mindset. My partner in, what do we call him? Co host, or am I his co host? I don't know. But my other host, John Modern Life Dating, will not be here today, unfortunately. So it's just me again, which is fine because I got some good stuff for you guys. The purpose of the show here is to give you guys skill sets that you can walk away with after every episode that'll help you in your game, whether that's dating, attracting new women, sex, or, maintaining a long-term relationship. So that's what we're here for. And today we're going to focus on some examples of instant dates. So I kind of asked in my community, I threw a post up earlier this afternoon. What do you guys want to talk about? Right. And a couple of responses. The first responses had to do with, the cold approach and pickup and basically how to escalate and all that stuff. And the idea was proposed of an instant date. So you meet a brand new girl and you've never met her before. You start talking. Next thing you know, you guys are having a drink or a cup of coffee and it turns into a little bit of a date, right? And then it kind of moves on from there. So that's your ideal scenario, is that you meet a girl in a situation where you can right there basically have a date with her instead of having to do the whole dance of, okay, well, let's exchange information and maybe could I take you out sometime or whatever you're going to try to do. And then you have to reopen her over text. And then, girls nowadays can be very difficult and they won't text back, or they'll have all reasons why they're obstructing meeting up, even if when she met you the first time, it went well. And there's all kinds of stuff there. Right. So the easy, I'll leave that to John. John is in spirits. John is in spirit saying, boom, baby, we are alive. All right. That's what he's saying. He's saying that subconsciously. All right. So we'll leave that there. What's this one? Did he fire John for being no, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't even mean to put your thing up there. No one's fired. He's just traveling, and so his schedule's a little bit inconsistent, different time zones and whatnot. It's fine. I can carry the show. It's not a big deal. All right. And at any rate, so we're going to talk about those skills in closing a girl, getting an instant date. And I thought I would provide you with stories. So we're going to do this in kind of a storytelling format. I was looking for a couple of slides that I can't find. So I was going to relate it to some slides. I don't know where I put the one slide I wanted to use. So might go slide free today, or I might use some other slides or whatever to illustrate a couple points. But we're going to go over and do a little bit of storytelling because, as you guys know, I have look at this guy. We're going to put you in a timeout, bro. I don't know why you're being a fag. All right. So anyway, we're, yeah. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So I'm going to do this in a little bit of a storytelling format. I don't know if I'm the best storyteller in the world. Probably not. Right. I have lots of clients, though, over the years, probably over the past decade, eight to 9 years of doing this, coached well over 1,000 guys easily. And I have a lot of stories about women, stories about pickups, field reports, all those things from those guys who are following my direction and doing well. Right. So that kind of leads us to also, you might want to consider joining the school community, right? Because, and I'll put that link here right now in the chat. So the school community, there's a little over about 850 members, somewhere close to that. I'm going to start charging for that community and offering more value there very soon. So some things that are happening is, and there's a link right now. Right now it's free to get into school. Okay. And there's a lot of free stuff there to help you get started. But it's getting to a point where for new members, I'm going to end up charging for the community because there's a lot of value there, and I'm going to start providing more value there and having people be there for a small monthly fee. The guys who already joined and are grandfathered in are not going to be charged, at least right now. Okay, that could change in the future, but for now, they still get to be there for free. New members will be required to pay a small monthly. So that's happening and changing because I am dropping sexual psychology this course has been, probably people have been waiting on this course for 2 or 3 years now. This is something that guys have been wanting. They've been waiting on it. I've been calculating the best way to go about it, right? But it's just basically how to bang a girl to a point where she falls in love with you and wants to be with you above and beyond everybody else. Look, here's the thing. We've been tracking and following this for a while. Women want the best, right? That's hypergamy. And everybody on the internet is all focused on all these other things that don't matter as much. Well, she's going to just go with a guy who has more money, or she's going to go with a guy who's taller or a little bit better looking or whatever, right? Just like all of these things that guys are focused on. Usually they're external things that get you to feel bad about yourself and why, and feel bad about women and feel like, oh, I can't make it work with a girl because Chad, the infamous Chad, is going to come along and steal your girl, right? Or whatever. Here's the thing that everybody is ignoring, okay, in the dating help space is that if you create, there's the thing that keeps it together is two things: frame, right? So she sees the world the way that you see it and matches your values and matches your direction, okay? And she's excited about falling into your leadership. And that frame doesn't happen without peak experiences. So I did a talk on frame not too long ago. Was the last week, 2 weeks? I think it was last week. I'm not sure, but we did the talk on frame, and we talked about one of the 4 pillars being peak experiences. Well, that means in the bedroom. And most guys, probably you included, watching this, don't take that personal. It's just statistically, it's a small percentage of guys who can have sex with girls consistently and know what they're doing and know how to create a sexual experience that is out of this world for that girl. And I will tell you, and I will show you more research in another stream, that regardless of what a girl says, okay, whatever her stated preferences are, her revealed preferences show that the number one thing that keeps her with a dude is good lover. That's it. When she is being, banged the right way, okay, is the best way to say it, to censor it for YouTube, right? She has a real hard time not falling in love with the guy and a real hard time leaving, and the problem is a lot of these women find themselves in this precarious situation where they're having the best sex with a guy who doesn't offer them what they want for a long-term relationship. And so now they find themselves in a predicament. A lot of women find themselves there. Well, you don't want the girl that you're dating or that you want to marry someday or that you want to have kids with or that you are thinking of getting serious with. You don't want that girl to be in that dilemma where some ex, created all the peak experiences for her sexually, and you're just the good guy who matches everything else. And now she's got to make a decision between go with a good guy like yourself or find a guy who fucks her the right way. You don't want to be a guy in that position. And she will never tell you the truth about that. She will never tell you if you're the guy that she is compromising her sexual desire for in order to be with. She will never fucking tell you. That's the thing. It is the way it is. You can be mad at women or you can be mad at the world, but that is what it is. And the only solution is to learn how to have sex with a girl to create these peak experiences. And how that's done happens psychologically and with her limbic system and her emotions. And most of that work is done prior to penetration, right? There are guys who get a little specific here. The the myth, well, I don't want to call it a myth, but what the narrative from the scientific community and the sexual health or sexual psychology community, right, is that women usually don't orgasm through penetrative sex. And only 1/10 of women are orgasming during penetrative sex, and only 1/3 of women are orgasming during sex at all, right? That's the real statistics. And the narrative is that, well, women are just not designed to orgasm through penetrative sex. Yet, okay, I have a whole test sample of a lot of guys, when I'm not even just talking myself, but guys who've coached me on this stuff, who are creating orgasms for women, the women are having orgasms with them. We'll put it like that. And it's not just one girl, it's multiple guys, multiple girls. So how is it that I have like 100% success rate? Pretty much. I haven't really tried to collect that data in a scientific way, but I cannot recall a situation where the success, where it wasn't success here. So like, I mean, I can't recall a situation where a guy was like, well, fucking, it's not working. She's just not able to have an orgasm with me or whatever. Like, I can't recall that. Regardless of what her problems were, all these dudes are getting these women to come. So either I just got lucky and I'm coaching the 1/10 of guys who are with girls who happen to just, orgasm during penetration because that's who they are, right? And I just got lucky. And all these dudes who have coached with me on the sexual part and the sexual technique and the sexual psychology just happen to be with women who are part of the 1/10 who's, as the scientific community would want to say, whose bodies are designed for them to come that way. So either out of thousands of guys, there's been a few hundred that have gone through and coached me on this stuff. I'm either getting real lucky, and these guys are getting lucky that they just happen to be finding that 1/10 of women who orgasm that way, or a more believable fucking idea is that there's actual things you do psychologically and physically that create a neurological response of a penetrative orgasm and having peak experiences, and that there's techniques and skill sets that go into that are teachable skills, by the way, and that are not dependent on your anatomy. So it doesn't matter how tall you are, how big or small your dick is, right? For the most part, you know what I mean? I say for the most part is you're going to run into a problem. Somebody is classically in the micro penis category. I'm not trying to be funny, but if there's somebody who's struggling with that, that's probably the one challenge, because they're just not going to hit the nerve endings that they need to hit with their equipment, pretty much, right? So that would be one thing, but minus that small percentage of men, right? It has nothing to do with any of those other things. It has everything to do with trainable skills. Anyways, I'm going to train people in those skills in the course that's going to drop, and the enrollment will open up next month sometime towards the end. You can learn it and be part of the smaller percentage of guys who can make this happen consistently for whatever woman they're with, or you can just be like the rest of the world of men and women who cope and say women are just not designed that way and only 1/10 of them have it, and so there's other ways and whatever. It's up to you. It's up to you. So, and look, everyone wants to talk. This is no offense, but no offense. It's not that going down on a girl is bad or something. I'm not one of those guys. But I'm telling you that this is the cope from the scientific community as well. Well, like there's books written on the female orgasm that many guys have read. Where the guy is basically well, let's talk about going down and vibrating and doing all these things because penetrative sex is not how she's designed, and that they follow that same narrative, and it's bullshit. Not true. Not true. Fake news or whatever the fuck he says now. I'm not right. It's a fake news. Okay. It's fake news in the scientific community. Women will absolutely come their brains out through penetrative sex when you know what you're doing and when she's able to open herself up emotionally and psychologically so her body can respond appropriately. And I'm not saying going down is a bad thing, but that isn't a requirement. It really isn't. So yeah. And that's that. So that's a good one. So get in the community before I start charging money for it, because that's going to happen probably next week. Okay. And then it's not free anymore. Then you're going to have to pay a monthly. And if you didn't get in time, you're fucking lost, dude. Sorry. There's too much value there. So I should have, could have been charging it for it from the get-go. There's free courses, free stuff there. I do live webinars on occasion, usually once every couple months, that I just do for the community. You know what I mean? It's not part of a paid coaching program. And so if you want access to all that stuff, you can get in without having to pay anything, but you got to take your little happy ass over to that link and click the link and get over there. Right. And that's the other thing too. When I start taking pre-enrollment for sexual psychology, I'm going to cut it off at 50 people. So if you're not in the course, and if you're not in the guys who are on my pre-enrollment list are going to get a first crack at signing up, then I'll open it up for everybody, and then it's closed, and that's it. All right. And then that'll be the end of it. You have to either be in a, like a mastermind program or something to have access, or one of the 50 that gets in, because I want to be able to answer everybody's questions on live calls and stuff. That's why I make it a tighter number. So anyways, that's coming. All right. Now let's talk about the instant date thing. All right. Let's do instant dates. Okay. So as you guys know, cold approach is really king, right? I mean, dating apps suck nowadays. All right. They're on the downtick. Social media is better than dating apps as far as connecting with women, but it's hard to scale that, and you don't know what you're getting necessarily, depending when you know what I mean? There's a lot of things, smoke and mirrors people can do on social media. It's a lot less reliable. It can work. I mean, I get dating apps to work for guys today. I get social media hookups and all that to work with guys today who do it. But I'm finding that the ability to cold approach a woman is the skill set that gives you kind of it's a massive tactical advantage for you guys. If you're able to do that successfully, man, it is a tactical advantage, because there's just no downside to learning that skill. Not only is it the most reliable way for you to get in front of beautiful women and close and get dates, but it also will enhance your online behavior or your dating app behavior. If you can cold approach really well, you're going to be good on a dating app. You know what I mean? As long as you follow some certain rules and get good photos. Social media, same thing. Like if you're going to connect with girls on social media, if you're good at cold approach, your ability to communicate with women and get them on dates from DMs and stuff is going to be like massively enhanced. All right. So you got a cold approach, right? Now, when you cold approach somebody, what are you trying to do, right? You want it to turn into a date. Well, a lot of people don't think about this. They don't think about, well, if I could turn this into a date right now, or even just today, like, hey, stop by your house. I stop by my house and drop some shit off or change clothes real quick and meet you for a drink. Wouldn't that be great? See, her emotional buy-in is at a high. Maybe her hormones are lined up just right. Maybe her schedule's lined up just right. And that's why the cold approach worked. She's showing interest right now. She's showing, maybe she's ovulating, right? So her body is saying, hey, I'm interested. You know what I mean? So the time is right now. You're going to get a phone number and text her a week later. Well, beautiful women today have nothing but attention from simps and nothing but time to dick around, right? And so if you don't make a solid impact on your cold approach, how many times how many of you guys find yourself ghosted later when you're trying to hook up the date? All the time, right? Because how she feels in the moment when she meets you isn't how she's going to feel 2 days from now, 3 days from now, a week from now. So you have to make the biggest impact you can on that meeting. A 5-minute conversation and doing the classic street game or club game, cold approach. Oh, hey, you look cute. I just thought I'd come over, say hello, small talk this, small talk that. All right. Well, hey, why don't we go get a drink sometime? Or why don't we, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. And then you exchange something, right? I mean, that's cool. And if you're a really good looking guy, you'll make that impact right away. But do you want to rely on that? I sure as fuck don't. I don't consider myself this massively attractive dude. You know what I mean? I don't know. Women find me attractive, but I mean, I'm not relying on that necessarily. I would rather make a strong, emotional impact, which means, of course, sexual in a sense, right? And tapping into that part of her brain. I want to make that impact on a first meeting. And if I can go grab a coffee or a drink or go for a short walk or do something with the girl right that minute and increase that, anticipation and make her want to see what I'm about, like, why wouldn't I do that? The problem is a lot of guys who are learning cold approach, y'all get fucking nervous. And so first obstacle is approaching and opening. And then once you get through that obstacle, then it's holding the conversation. And then a lot of you guys are like, okay, like the conversation's going okay. And I haven't been rejected. So I need to bounce out of this conversation before I say something stupid or before she thinks I'm unattractive. Many guys, I don't know, say most, probably most really, but many guys have that mindset. It's a mindset of I'm not good enough to talk to this girl. That's what that is. I'm not the prize. I got to get that number and get out of this conversation before I fuck it up. Well, what do you think is going to happen on the date? Do you think it's going to go any better? You know what I mean? And if that's your mindset and if that's kind of how you're treating it, you're not going to make that impact. And you're probably going to get ghosted a good percentage of the time by good girls who are attractive, who wouldn't ghost you if you made more of an impact. Like the only difference between them going out with you and sleeping with you versus not is the impact you're making on their, instinctual brain that says, that makes decisions as to whether or not they should sleep with a guy. That's the only difference. Okay. Is that impact that you're not making or that you are making a lot of times. So let's go. All right. So let's get into a story. All right. And so I'm going to break down these stories and we'll talk about them. Like I got notes. So I'm filling in the blanks. The names, of course, have been changed to protect, the identities of these people, and they're all true stories. So everything I'm going to share today is a true story. Okay, it's actual events that happen, but I'm changing names and some details just so that to protect privacy. And I'm preserving, though, in the story the things that were said and done that are good game decisions that will help give you guys an example. My thought is that, like, you guys need examples. I have courses and I have stuff where I can kind of mathematically go over a formula, but that's not going to help you. You need to get out and experience it. In an absence of doing that, we got to see what other experiences are. Field reports are really valuable. And if you have field reports, and you're in school, post them, man. You know what I mean? Post those field reports. It's good for everybody to see. It's good to get feedback for your own learning. And it allows guys to learn and grow and see what real examples look like. All right. So first story is, we'll call it the coffee shop detour. All right. So Ethan was on his way to running some errands and doing something, and he stopped in at a coffee shop, and he's in line, and he's ordering. He orders just a black coffee, and then he leans against the pickup counter, playing with his phone, answering a text for work. It's one of those warm Saturday afternoons, and nobody seems to be in a hurry, right? And he isn't either. And then he sees a girl who's kind of looks like she's making a decision. She's in line, and the way that they're aligned, they can kind of see each other. She's just looking. She kind of noticed him looking at her, and she kind of smiles, and she's like, does an audible right? So he just kind of nonchalantly just says, let me see, what was the, sorry. So he just nonchalantly says, back. And he goes, looks like you're making decisions. Well, I got a serious question for you. If someone had tried neither one of these things, what would you recommend? A cinnamon roll or a blueberry scone? And she kind of laughs. She goes, oh, well, I don't know. That's a lot of pressure. And that is a very serious question you're asking me. He's like, yeah, dead serious question. Like, lots riding on this answer, in fact. And she goes, well, I know it is. And I see, I don't want to waste like 600 calories, right? So if I'm making that decision, it's a serious one. And he's like, yeah, you got to watch those calories. I mean, definitely. Clearly, I'm watching my calories, right? I'm watching my womanly or manly figure, whichever one you think. And she kind of laughs, and she's like, well, okay, well, cinnamon roll. I think that's an easy one. And then Ethan says, very confident of you. She's like, well, I've had them both, and I think cinnamon roll is just the better choice, even if it might be a little more calories. And he just kind of nods thoughtfully, right? And he's like, well, I'll trust your unnecessarily strong opinion. And he's like, well, why don't you order a cinnamon roll and I'll pay for it and we could try it. All right. So I'll stop the story there. So what happened? What broke down here? So he's in a line. He sees someone looking at him. Most of you guys wouldn't have had the balls to say a fucking thing. No offense, just the truth. All right. You wouldn't have had the nuts to say anything. You would be worried about getting rejected, or you'd be worried about this. You wouldn't know what to say. You'd overthink it, whatever. All right. You don't need to overthink shit. He got what we would call an indicator of interest. All right. Which he was kind of looking at her. She got caught and she just sort of smiled instead of something else. And then she made an audible sound as she was looking at the menu, above, which meant, okay, like she's okay with getting his attention. And instead of hesitating, he moved in and just went with a hypothetical fantasy question. Now, part of the reason why I was late today, I was looking for a slide that I can't find, but we'll just go over it. A lot of what I'm going to reference back to is my acronym. I call it Ford GIFT. All right. Ford is, it's a sales acronym. And then I added the GIFT for pickup and broadening. Just a quick, easy way to give you guys a reference point of shit to talk about when you're trying to talk to women. Okay. And Ford GIFT stands for family, occupation, recreation, dreams. G is like geography, like, oh, are you from here? Or are you from the area? I come here often, right? That's geography related questions. I is interests, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you like golf too. That's cool. Whatever, you know what I mean? And then F is fantasy. So anything hypothetical, okay, asking a hypothetical question of if somebody were to had never tried either one, right? So that's a hypothetical, that's fantasy. A lot of humor exists in a fantasy, a lot of playfulness is in fantasy, and then together is a togetherness format. So if you watch how this flawless pickup went, okay, he saw the indicator of interest. He opened with a hypothetical question, so a question opener. Anyone in pickup knows what that means, right? And it was a hypothetical fantasy thing, right? It was, if someone had never tried either one, which would you recommend, right? So like, there's not a high like consequence to answering that question. It's kind of a fun, playful way of opening up a conversation, right? And connecting with another person. And so there's some playfulness going on back and forth, a little banter, right? And then what does he do? He kind of makes a close right there. Why don't you order one? I'll pay for it. And then we could try it. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you what my thoughts are. So right there, he set up an instant date without even trying it. You know what I mean? And as the way that conversation's going, why would she say no to that? You see what I mean? And that's making a serious impact. So these are real stories, guys. So I'm going to share them with you because I want you to see what right looks like and what good results look like. A lot of times in the coaching calls, I'm getting people that tell their field reports and they're not always good, and I'm trying to correct them, right? So these are the good stories, and it gives you something to think about, engage your brain, and model after how to connect with people socially in different ways. All right. And so at any rate, so she does that. She orders the cinnamon rolls, and then a minute later, they're both, he has his coffee. He's waiting with her, and she's like, "I'm Maya, by the way." He's like, "So we'll continue with the story now. I'm Maya, by the way." He says, "Ethan," and she holds out her hand. They shake hands, and then she's like, "All right. So was today your designated like coffee and judge pastry day, or what what is this what you normally do on a Saturday?" And he goes, no, I had a meeting that got canceled, and I do different work, so sometimes I work on Saturdays. She goes, "Oh, well, mine too." And then there was just this pause, okay, and then she's thinking and he's thinking, and then she's probably wondering, like, I just ordered the cinnamon roll, and fuck, like, now what do we do? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know this guy like before. And so she's probably thinking those things, and there's little, but he's not worried about that silence. Ethan is thinking like, well, we're just going to move this along, and he has frame. So he's going to take the frame of the situation and lead. So he just says, "You know what?" It's like, "What?" He says, "It's too nice to sit inside." And she's like, "Yeah, agreed." So when she gets the stuff, he just says, "Come," he just starts moving, like, "Come on with me," kind of a gesture. And she walks with him outside. They find the outside seating area. They find a small table overlooking sidewalk, a little people watch. And then she's like, "Okay, so what exactly?" So they sit down, and now they're talking. And she's like, "So what do you actually do?" He says, "Well, I'm a physical therapist." And she's like, "Oh," and she grins, like, "And so, oh, so you're professionally qualified to tell me that my posture is terrible," or something like that. And he's like, "I promise I won't diagnose a stranger before Saturday or on Saturdays, So, and she's like, so then she kind of like laughs or whatever, right? And so the next 20 minutes, they're just effortlessly talking. And they're now enjoying this little cinnamon roll together. And they're talking using, we could break it down from that Ford gift format. So they talked about travel, their first jobs, favorite cities and cities they've lived in, and how long they've been in this particular place. Even an embarrassing high school story came in. And so that's that banter that, a lot of you guys get confused about and are missing. And so that's where in my programs, and I'll just tell you here, it's fine, but you got to practice it. You have Ford Gift, which is your family, occupation, recreation, dreams, geography, interest, fantasy, togetherness. That's your broad spectrum of topics you could talk about. Just about every topic you would talk about could fall into those categories. Then you have from there depth. How deep do we get into these topics or categories? The depth falls into one of two spectrums. One is how emotionally inspiring or igniting the conversation is. So a level 1 conversation is just like logistics. So what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a physical therapist. What do you do for a living? Whatever, right? How was your work day? Today was good. Had to do a lot of invoices today. How about yours? Oh, it was pretty boring. I had a couple appointments canceled. That's all like low level, low investment conversations, level 1, right? It's not very deep. Most conversations that people have are level 1 conversations. So you have to have level 1 conversations to interact with somebody, right? When you first see somebody, what is it usually like? Like, hey man, what's up? Yeah, what's up? Level 1, right? Hey, bro, how's it going? It's good, right? Even if he's having a terrible day, right? Yeah, things are good, whatever, right? It's just, they're not getting super in depth, right? You're just keeping it at level 1. Now, unfortunately, a lot of couples in relationships stop having deep conversations and everything becomes level 1 conversations. And then the guy wonders why the sex is dried up in the relationship. You're not inspiring her emotionally. That's why. There's no igniting of emotions and feelings and getting into subconscious and motivations and all that stuff, because the relationship newness has worn off. So now they're just level 1 conversations all the time. How is work? Fine. We're good. What do you want for dinner? Steak, man. I'm not in the mood for steak. Let's order something. Okay, cool. All right. Want to watch a show? Sure. Let's watch a show. All right. We'll go to bed. You know what I mean? Like, that's what most couples do. And it's really fucking boring. And then you guys wonder why your girl fantasizes about cheating on you and shit with other men. It's because you're boring, no offense, right? But it is, or she's boring or whatever. And so you have to inspire people's emotions by not just having level 1 conversations. You need level 1. 2 is motivation. Level 2 is inspiring emotion. If you make a girl laugh, for example, like really hard, like really good laugh, you've inspired emotions. That's level 2. If she tells you an embarrassing story from high school, that's a level 2 thing. She's talking about something that involved her emotions and her experiences and her motivations. If she says, what do you do for more work? Like, oh, well, I just work in accounts receivable. Really? Is that a job that you really love, or is that something that you're just doing for now? Well, I'm just kind of doing, who gets an accounts receivable because they really love it. I don't know. It's just something I'm doing for now. Well, if you could like make your dreams come true but you had to work. All right. So your dream's going to come true, but you have to work someplace. What job would you have? What would be your favorite? What would be the thing that would really inspire you to show up every day? So what I did with that question, that is a fun question to ask on dates or an Insta date, or when you just meet somebody, and it inspires emotion, it inspires motivation. See, so that's where we take that Ford Gift thing, we get a level deeper. And then level 3 is togetherness framework. When he was like, he did a togetherness framework right off the bat with, let's order the cinnamon roll that you were talking about. You know what I mean? And he changes the whole frame. It's like, oh, you're trying to sell me on the cinnamon roll. Well, let's see how good it is, kind of a thing, right? Like, it almost seems like she feels in that moment almost like she's trying to say the cinnamon and make her case. She's trying to make her case that the cinnamon roll is good. You know what I mean? Not even like thinking about the fact that it's a totally contrived situation to begin with. You know what I mean? She didn't show up to the coffee place trying to sell this guy a cinnamon roll. It's completely contrived, but her brain follows into that social paradigm or framework because of the frame that the guy created, the reality the guy created that now she's looking through. And so now it's a fantasy discussion that turns into something real involving togetherness. That is now like they're in a level 3 category or area. And for gift, they're doing something together, right? So now it's almost like they're a couple in a way, even though they're not a couple, they're strangers. But you see how quickly that can happen. And so these are the things that are going on. Okay. And so these are the types of things you'll train or learn in doing more work like with me, right? But you guys will get some pretty good ideas from this stream. So now back to the story. All right. So they have this great conversation, and no one's like, they're not looking at their phones. He's got her engaged in these different levels. Oh, I should mention another component here, because I said there's categories, right? So there's the levels or depth of emotions. And then there's also levels of, we could say, revealing about yourself or privacy. So that's your green, yellow, red topics. So a green topic is something like, you could have that conversation in front of anybody, right? It's easy conversation to have. There's nothing controversial about it. Do you know what I mean? If you're talking about, I don't know, just like your dog or something, like it's pretty socially acceptable. You could, at a work meeting or a work party or at a family get together, you could have green topic conversations all day, right? Then there's yellow topics. Yellow are a little bit more risky of a topic. Like, let's say politics, maybe, right? Or political opinion, or an opinion that's not just about something innocuous like blueberry scone or cinnamon roll, but like an opinion that maybe involves something that's a little bit more controversial, right? Or some information about yourself that, and this is going to get into the next part. I'll get into that, but some information about yourself or that might not be socially acceptable, or some sort of opinion you have or thing that you do that not everybody would be okay with, right? For example, you guys, and then there's red topics. Red that's absolutely, only certain people in certain contexts can have that conversations. You know what I mean? So maybe talking about sex, for example, in getting in depth about it, not just joking around or whatever, sex could be a red topic. You know what I mean? And so there's that level. And the more somebody is willing to reveal or converse with you that gets closer to red topics, the more they trust you and the more they're invested. And then the third thing actually is whether or not they're talking about something that they could reveal publicly, whether they're talking about something that is more private, or whether they're talking about something that's more secret. So everybody has secrets that they don't tell anybody, or maybe only one or two people in the world know. That's their darkest secrets, right? If you get a girl to tell you her darkest secret, like, her rapport with you is massive. You know what I mean? But even if you're probably not going to get her to reveal a darkest secret at a first meeting, but like, if she's revealing or talking about things that are more about her private life, things that she wouldn't tell everybody, or she could be embarrassed about or could feel judged about telling everybody, that's a high amount of rapport and emotional buy-in as well. Again, all of this stuff has to do with trust and attraction both, right? And so those are your categories. Are you guys following? All right. I had a nice slide and I can't find it. So now that's what's happening in these conversations. Okay. Let's keep going. She looks down at her coffee cup. Maya looks down at her coffee cup and she says, so what, what's funny? And Ethan's like, well, what? She's like, I was planning to spend 15 minutes here. And she's like, but it's been, and then Ethan checks his watch and he says 43 minutes. Just goes, She kind of smiles. And then she's like, I don't know, I guess this accidentally became something, whatever this is. And then he kind of looks at her, makes eye contact. Are you trying to say an unofficial date? Like a coffee date? And then she kind of like pretends like she's thinking about it, yeah, maybe this is our first coffee date. And he says, well, does it count that we met 5 minutes before it started? And she's like, well, actually, I think that makes that a lot more impressive. And then he's like, he's like, I don't think the date's over yet. And then he looks, and down the street, it's a Saturday afternoon in a pretty busy sort of town, right? So like there's some music in the background, like somebody's playing music live somewhere, right? Maybe a street musician or something. He looks at her, he goes, come with me. So she stands up, and then they walk out, and she follows him. So what's happening here now is compliance. All right. And that happened earlier in the conversation too, but that's another thing to think about that I teach, which is what I call a compliance ladder, right? Which is that you are getting compliance, meaning she's agreeing to go with you or your frame, or agreeing to do the next action with you. And basically when you're getting compliance, compliance is following your frame, or a demonstration of that. And in order for her to follow your frame in a dating context, that's attraction has to be there, and a level of trust, right? At least trust that the outcomes are going to be good enough. And when I say trust, it's more of the law of female sexual selection, meaning, okay, there's more of a reward than a negative consequence that she perceives by following you, right? And so compliance is important, and you are getting compliance really all the way to the bedroom. All right. And again, I get more detail on that in course material and instructional webinars and stuff. Okay. So now we'll continue. So he gets the compliance. They walk and they go, and they're kind of watching the dude, street musician. And they're standing pretty close to each other. And let's see. And then he kind of, they kind of have a break in music, and now they're kind of like touching each other and in each other's space, And so this is where you break physical barriers when you can. That's part of the compliance. And when I say breaking physical barriers, I'm not talking like without consent or something, right? But you get physically closer, and a lot of times they call that kino, and they have weird names from the pickup community for this, but you're getting physically closer and physically touching as part of the process of drawing together as two people in, we could call, doing the mating dance as human beings, right? And so they're there, and she's like, I was not expecting this to be my afternoon. And Ethan says, me either, and he kind of pulls her in, and it looks almost like she's kind of like, looks at him, and she's nervous, and her eyes kind of dilate a little bit, and she's kind of frozen because it's very close. And then he goes, you know what? And he's very close to her. He goes and he comes closer, almost as if he's going to kiss her. And she's, she's kind of frozen, not sure. And then he goes to her ear and says, have you been over there yet? Let's go check this out. And then he grabs her by the hand, and they walk out. So what he did was a little bit of push pull. All right. In that scenario, he felt like, okay, maybe he could have gotten away with a kiss, but her enthusiasm wasn't where he wanted it. So he instead, made a very slow, deliberate move, kind of whispering in her ear, our date's not over yet. Here, come with me. I've always wanted to go here, or whatever. And then they go across the street, and they go into like a store. All right. And so she's following him. She's complying. They have that moment. She's thinking about kissing, but not sure. So when he doesn't do it, but he's not kissing her because he lacks confidence. He's not getting nervous and shy. He's very deliberate and very confident. So she's like, well, maybe he wasn't really going to kiss me, or maybe he was, or maybe because there's too many people around, or maybe, you know what I mean? So now her hamster wheel that runs around in her brain is just going, right? What is this? How does this guy like me? I'm attracted, you know, she's having all of those feelings from that push pull, right? And so then they're going through and they're shopping a little bit, and he goes, so how do you feel? So how do you feel about making questionable decisions with strangers on a Saturday? And she goes, questionable? He's like, yeah, I mean, we've known each other for about an hour, and it's like, look how together we are right now. It's like we're like just a normal couple on a Saturday. Isn't that crazy? And now we're looking at handmade candles together. And he picks up one of the candles, and this one smells like cedar. And she smells it, and she's like, it's like, it kind of smells like a dude's cabin who tries too hard, and with a hint of sock smell at the end. And he just kind of starts laughing, and he goes, wow, you have strong candle opinions. You know what I mean? She's like, yes, I'm very serious about my candles, just like my cinnamon rolls, you know? And so again, she's shit testing a little bit. They're bantering, they're having fun. You know, when he says he kind of likes the smell and she says she doesn't, and makes a funny joke about it smelling like a guy's cabin who's trying too hard, smells like socks. What is that? That's a shit test. Does he get butthurt or mad or going, oh, and then starts getting into his head, you know, like, oh, red pill, you know, and fucking glitches out and blows the date? No, you know what I mean? He's having fun, right? And that's the whole thing. It's supposed to be fun. And all in all, time together, they've probably been together maybe an hour and a half, maybe a little more than that, 2 hours now. You know what I mean? And so they go into a couple other stores. They're, you know, looking at stuff. There's one that has some like little snacks and stuff. They like little samples, and they're sampling things. And they literally turned it into almost like an everyday, like a Saturday that you would have with a long-term relationship, somebody, right? Like this is like a girlfriend, boyfriend, or a newly married couple out on a Saturday afternoon, you know, and doing stuff and enjoying themselves and kind of having a nice little date as a couple. That's the framework that's happening, even though they just met each other. Do you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of tension. And then she goes, well, it's later on, it's about 4 hours later now. Maya says, you know, this is officially the strongest first date I've ever had. And he goes, well, you know, you keep calling it a first date. And so she's like, well, and smiles, and she's like, well, if two people intentionally spend 4 hours together, even though it was after a 5-minute meeting before that, what else would you call it? And he goes, well, I'd call it maybe something special that we should pay a lot of attention to. And she's like, and you know what? It's like, neither of us were trying to, like, you weren't trying to like impress me. He's like, well, I would try to impress you. I just didn't have time to prepare, you know? And so she laughs. She's like, all right, well, but you know, and so they kind of get a laugh about that. And it's getting later in the day. And then she finally goes, you know, that, you know, I actually do have somewhere I need to be though. So, but this is really, really nice. And he nods and goes, yeah, it was nice. And, you know, I should probably pretend that I have plans too. And she laughs, and she's like, no, I mean, and then they just kind of brief silent. He says, well, he goes, but no, I mean, and he goes, you don't need to say anything else. And then he pulls her in, And then he starts kissing her. And so now they're making out and kissing. And so from there, you know, they exchange numbers, and now they break contact. So that's how that ends. All right. So that's our first story. That is an example of an insta date. All right. And so hopefully that's a good story for you guys to look at. I have more, so we're gonna get into it. I'm reading through notes again, and I have the important points, important things that happened to make those game observations, and this is all true stuff, right? But I am kind of ad-libbing the story as we go along, so you have to bear with me. All right. I'm not reading a script. I wasn't sure what I was going to do today. So, because John, not being able to make it, changed the plans for topics. So at any rate, you know what I mean? Just keep that in mind as I go through the story, but these are real field reports. And that's a really excellent example of an insta date that can happen to you. But if you're sitting at home or playing on the internet, and by the way, I'm not shaming you for playing video games. They're fucking hell of a lot of fun. But if you spend your whole Saturday playing a video game instead of going to get a cup of coffee in a nice kind of busy town that's upscale, that has shit going on, and it has girls there, like, you're not going to meet the girls if you don't get out of your house. And you're not going to substitute, meeting girls in public with internet. Do you see what I mean? You can't create this experience necessarily just from the internet, although there is a fair amount you can do when you know what to do, but it's an uphill battle when you're trying to do this shit online. I'm not saying you shouldn't, that's not impossible. Certainly guys do it, and certainly I teach guys to do it. So there are guys, maybe I will do a show on how to maximize your ability to set up dates from the internet, be it dating app or social media. And social media is an excellent way of doing it, but there's just no replacing this kind of thing. And many guys don't have the courage to set these instant dates up and let the day flow. Many guys aren't going out with an open, adventurous idea of what could happen with their day or with their evening. And that's a mistake. You know what I mean? Don't just because the rest of the world has isolated themselves and, ruined their brains with fucking TikTok or whatever, that doesn't mean you have to, right? And when you're right in front of a girl and creating this experience, her phone is getting put down. Do you know what I mean? She's just not staring at her fucking phone, right? Now, if you guys got real questions, we got some dickheads in the chat, and we got some good people in the chat too. If you guys got real questions, you really want an answer, throw down like a super chat or one of those stickers. I don't know what the fuck they are. Small. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. I'm not trying to collect your money. It just tells me that you have an important question, that you're invested. The act of throwing one of those little super chats or whatever, that helps the algorithms and spread this show to other people who might need it. So that's another thing too. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing to my channel, Apex Mindset, as well as John's Modern Life Dating. Okay. And be subscribed, hit those like buttons, support the channel, because we don't get supported by the algorithms. And there's guys that need these messages. This is not just entertainment, fucking brain rot. Okay. This is not bullshit brain rot on the internet. This is stuff that will help you have great experiences with women. And all over the internet, everybody's bitching and talking about how their experiences with women suck and the dating market sucks and this sucks and that sucks. Listen, it's worth a conversation. We understand, that a lot of things suck right now. Like, that's true. But what the fuck are you going to do about it? Right? So this kind of show is going to give you those skills. Watching some brain rot entertainment isn't going to do that for you. So please fucking hit those buttons and share or do whatever the fuck, right? Help it out, right? Because guys need it. And girls need it too, man. Girls need to hear this shit, because there's plenty of fucking girls out there that watch the show right now and maybe they should be going out for coffee. Maybe they should get out of the house more often, right? Maybe they should be approachable. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like it's a thing, you know? I know there's a shortage of guys who aren't pussies. We have that problem. And so that's why girls are just like perpetually pissed and unattractive to men. And there's just so many women, unfortunately, too, who have just not dateable. You know what I mean? Just because their behavior, their mental health, you know what I mean, is just so broken. But that doesn't mean everybody. You got to go where the women are, and you got to go talk to them, or else it just isn't going to fucking work for you. So again, please share this shit to others. I'm going to get to this someone popped into one of those super chats. Zach, I appreciate it. So I'm going to do yours, and then we're going to get to story number 2. All right. So Zach says, no question. Oh, hey, thanks, man. you're the man. Thank you for the help, dude. Thanks for the algorithmic help. Just money and because of the knowledge you give. You boys better be taking notes. Thanks, brother. I do appreciate it, man. All right, so let's get into instant date number 2. Let's see if I can improve my storytelling skills. I didn't rehearse any of this, and I'm looking at notes, so fuck me. Let's go. All right, so I'm gonna skip to story number 2 or 3. I had 3 of them. I'm gonna save that other one. I don't know. We'll see how long this takes. Okay, so now we got a couple dudes going out to hang out, and they end up meeting women. Okay. And we'll see how that goes. Most pickup scenarios don't go like the story I just told, because usually a girl is out with somebody. It's not, I mean, I don't know. There's a fair amount of time in my own personal history. There's a fair amount of time I've met women who are by themselves, but much of the time, definitely more than 50%, I'm meeting women who are out with people. They're out with friends, they're out with girlfriends, they're out with guy friends. And you got to be able to approach sets. You got to be able to approach groups of people and be able to converse with a group, and then isolate the girl that you're interested in, or that's interested in you, or draw out the girl that's interested in you, or select the girl that you're interested in, isolate her, and then move her into your frame. You know what I mean? That's a skill set. You have to learn how to do that. It's not just opening up one girl. Like, you know, that's the example. Like when you got your training wheels on, that's the example you use. But when you're actually out doing the shit, it's not as common to see a girl by herself. And when you meet a girl by herself, a lot of times those defenses are up because you're a strange guy talking to her. You know what I mean? And the scarier you are, and I tend to be a little bit scary. So the scarier you are, you know what I mean? The more, nervous they can get, and maybe less likely, to want to talk to you, the more obstacles you might run into. Whereas oftentimes I found it personally, but because I don't have this rejection fear that guys have, you know what I mean? Maybe I did at one time. I don't know. I had, not saying like this fearless guy or whatever, but like, I don't know. I grew up different. I guess that's the way. Like I'm a little older than some of you guys. And so when I grew up, if you wanted dates or sexual access, you had to talk to women. And so I've been doing it since I was bad at it when I was very young, high school. And you know what I mean? Like you just have to somehow overcome that shit and talk to women. Now in 2026, guys who are under 35, you know what I mean? Guys born after 1990 grew up with internet and social media replacing real world interactions with women. And they also grew up with pornography. My God, I got to do a fucking stream on that again. That the amount of poison that pornography has done to you guys who are under the age of 36 right now. I say that because, all right, if you were born in 1990, that means by the time you were in the mid 2000s, you were a teenager and could access free pornography at the click of a button on a phone, right? Or on your computer. When that day happened, it started ruining men en masse. I'm not this anti-sex guy or anti-porn guy. It's just the fucking real deal, man. Like there wasn't such a thing as a porn addiction, really. I mean, there probably was, but prior to the internet like that, when you had to like get it on a video, you know what I mean? Or get it in a magazine and go through that process. I mean, it just guys weren't like able to just scroll for hours on porn and go down every weird rabbit hole and have it not cost them any fucking money to do so. Like, I mean, that right there. And then you introduce the whole idea of online simping with OnlyFans and you know what I mean? And cam girls and all that shit. Man, I'm telling you, it just ruined dudes and their ability, ruin a man's ability to fuck. It ruined a man's ability to act like a man. It ruined a man's ability to talk to women, dude. Because when I was a kid, you didn't have that kind of shit. So you had to, figure out ways to get sexual access, which eventually meant talking to women, right? You had to try to do that. You had to deal with real people. You couldn't escape to your computer when I grew up. So my experiences are different. I'm sure maybe if I was like some of you guys who escaped to your computer when you were young, and I'm not shitting on you, you know what I mean? It's just what happens. All right. It's nobody told you that not to do that, I guess, or whatever. I don't fucking know, but you know what I mean? It's just what happens. Right. And so like you're a kid and you're some 9-10 years old, escaping to the computer to jerk off or tool around with pornography and stuff. You first start jerking off. Now that's all you're doing with easy access porn in front of you. It totally destroys your motivation and kills your fucking drive and your perceptions of real women in the world. You know what I mean? I'm not talking like expectations and stuff. I mean, I've had plenty of pornographic experiences, if you will, with women that exceed anything, a lot of the things you're going to see on camera. But like, it's not making sex dirty or something. It's just like you're replacing real sexual connections with the computer. And then that ruined your guys. If you're under 36 right now, you probably fucking don't cold approach people because it ruined your ability to do that. I don't know if you realize it. And you motherfuckers lie about that shit too. You know what I mean? Like, I know you motherfuckers do it. I know the majority of you do. And then you just lie about it because it's embarrassing. So I understand, but you gotta fucking get off the internet and talk to real women. That's the point. You know what I mean? At any rate, yeah. So let's get into the story though. I was a little tangent, but it's true though. And I guess that's the point is you gotta start. The sooner you start facing rejection and talking to women, I don't give a shit how feminists they are. I don't give a shit how fucking broken they are. I don't give a shit how fat they are. I don't give a shit what your excuse is. I'm not saying marry them. I'm not even saying have sex with them if they're unattractive, but just start approaching people, start making social connections. And if you're in some dystopian town where everybody's got a fucking gross piercings and fat and smells weird and addicted to drugs or SSRIs, if like that's your town, do you know what I mean? Like you just live in a crack land or something, fucking move, dude. Why do you still live there? You know what I mean? That's what you need to be figuring out. Okay. So like, there's no excuse. That's the point. Now let's get into this story. Okay. So again, approaching sets, right? And a lot of times you're not by yourself, you're with friends. So we got a story just like that. So we'll call him Jake and his friend Chris. All right. So they're at a festival, one of those, craft beer type food festivals or something, right? Where they block off a couple streets and they got vendors and all that. And so they just decide to go, they're going to try a few beverages, have a few snacks and see what's going on and maybe talk to some women, right? Great idea. So they go and they're looking around and they got live music at some other point. It's just a coincidence. Both these stories have live music. I don't know. It's not usually what happens, but at any rate, they're walking towards that. And, then they notice around the corner that there's three women kind of hanging around at like a high top little table. They're laughing. They're all pretty cute. You know what I mean? One is gorgeous. And then well, two of them are pretty gorgeous. The other one's like mid. And so they're kind of on their phones and just being girls. Right. And so Jake glances over and says, so it looks like those chicks are like the only ones having there. It looks like they're having more fun than we are. And his friend Chris like shrugs like, all right, let's go find out why. And so they go over there. All right. And so Jake's the one who's wanting to talk to women, right? And the Chris is kind of like, he's not a pickup guy. We'll put it like that. Do you know what I mean? But he's single, but whatever, he's not doing the training that the client who has this story, you know what I mean, it was doing, right? So it's fine, right? So they go, he's like, oh, fuck, you always do this. He's like, I know. Come on, let's go. And so they walk over there casually. All right. Jake smiles at the group and he's like, let's see, what was his? Oh yeah. It's like, all right. He does the disagreement one, right? So he's like, yeah, so my friend and I are having a really important disagreement and we need your guys' help. And the blonde, one of the chicks folds her arms like, oh, and he's like, so there's 3 food trucks. They all that have tacos. Which ones have the best ones? Which are the best tacos? The brunette answers immediately, Blue Truck. The redhead nods, yes, definitely. And then the third woman, oh no, the blonde said Blue Truck. The redhead said definitely. The third woman is a little bit taller, brunette, really hot, really pretty eyes. And she just looks at him and she looks at this Jake guy, looks at him up and down, kind of almost like, who the fuck do you think you are? Gives him that kind of look, He's like, I don't think you really give a shit about tacos. And Jake's kind of like, I care deeply about tacos. Kind of fakes, acts like he's like, I care, She's like, no. And she just kind of smiles a little bit. Goes, you're just looking for an excuse to talk to us. And so the friend Chris kind of like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like, all right, this chick shit testing. He kind of laughs, right? Jake kind of nods. He goes, actually, yes, that's absolutely correct. And the brunette, she smiles like she wants something. She's like, well, at least you're honest. And Jake goes, well, I find that honesty saves a lot of time. And she's like, oh. And she kind of crosses her arms, goes, well, I'm Olivia. Her real bitchy. And Jake's like, Jake. She tilts her head. You're surprisingly calm for a guy who just got caught trying to, and she's kind of fumbled over her words like she didn't know what to say. And he's like, caught? She's like trying to start a conversation. And he just kind of calmly nods thoughtfully. He's like, yeah, I'm guilty. What do you want what do you want? And she's like, kind of looks at him. Okay, well, now what? And he smiles and he's like, well, no, I'm hoping the sentence isn't too severe, maybe, but you caught me. Maybe throw me in handcuffs, call the police, and the blonde friend's kind of laughing and she's kind of like holding back to smile. And she's like, or no, actually, wait, she's like, well, actually, there was another part of the conversation. It was an important thing he said, so I want to get that right. Or she's like, well, oh yeah. She looks at him. Oh yeah. Then, oh yeah. He says, so yeah, I'm guilty, call the police, put me in cuffs or whatever. Then she's like, looks at him like, yeah. So what now? And he goes, maybe I'll put you in cuffs. That was it. And he goes, well, maybe I'll put you in cuffs. And then a couple of friends start laughing a bit, and he kind of just kind of smiles, and she's like, kind of ignores the comments, like, well, maybe you need to do a little community service. And the friend Chris, like, man, see, I told him he's always trying to fucking do this. And Olivia's like, oh, so you're always doing this? He's like, and he's like, hey, not everybody. We've met these three lovely people, Chris. Like, it's not the same as every other person we've met. Obviously, these are different. These three girls, they're different, And Chris goes, well, I think I've seen enough, And so then they all just kind of laugh or whatever, and then and Olivia laughs too, and then he looks. She kind of like smiles or whatever, and then Jake like points at her and goes, "There it is." And she's like, what? He's like, you smiled. She's like, I didn't smile. He's like, you did. You absolutely did. She's like, listen, I was briefly just less annoyed with you. He goes, see, we're already making progress. All right. So in this case, so far in the story, sorry I stumbled through it, but so far in the story, she was trying to be difficult. She was dominance testing him. Okay. And he was completely unfazed, and he was witty, and he out dominated her. So when a girl does this, it's not because she's not interested in you. It's usually quite the contrary. Especially a lot of times pretty girls with a little bit of an attitude do this stuff. They'll dominance test you because they have so many weak ass simps trying to get their attention all the time that they need to somehow separate who is a guy who can handle her vagina and who isn't. You know what I mean? And this is all happening on a subconscious instinctual level. And so that's what all this was. And when you recognize that and you hold your frame, it usually works beautifully. So now we'll continue with that story. So then they all introduce. All right. So the blonde's name was Hannah. The redhead was Mia. And then there's Olivia. Okay. And then you got Chris and Jake. So let's see if I can keep my name straight as I tell the story. So Olivia, despite her first impression, turned out to be pretty quick-witted and pretty impossible to out tease. So he would tease her or nag her, but not in the dumb ways that a lot of guys will try to nag a girl, but like just this playful sort of stuff. And she would take it like a champ. She would deliver it right back. Right. So that's what's happening now in this little bit of banter that they're having, and they're all hanging out. Right. And they've introduced themselves. They're talking a bit. And so they end up, they're sharing now this table. All right. For a minute. And then what happens during those conversations? Back to Ford Gift. Right. So Ford Gift is just an acronym to describe what happens in normal social conversation. When you understand Ford Gift and the different depths that I discussed earlier, then you can be more intentional about your casual banter or conversations. You'll never run out of what to say. You'll start getting creative with your storytelling as well as your questions. You won't fall into just turning things into interviews where you're just asking 30 questions and the chick is getting bored with having to answer all these fucking questions. All right. You balance out your own anecdotes and stories, and you learn creative ways of saying things and talking about things. And it ends up being a really good interaction, and you elevate them socially, whoever you're interacting with. Charisma is the art of making another person feel both good as well as elevated when they talk to you. That's what charisma is. Charisma is not making yourself look cool, all right? Although that may be part of the result, but it's really about making the other person feel good based on the conversation they're having. That's what charisma is in essence, all right? And so they're doing that. They're having this little interaction. All right. And then the conversation bounces from forward gift conversations, little stuff. They're talking about music and the music that was there and somebody new, somebody that was playing at the festival and all that stuff, right? And then that sort of translated, started talking about dates and the worst dates they've ever been on, came up or whatever. And then Jake asked, so what's the fastest way that you've known that a date wasn't going anywhere good? And so yeah, asked that to the group, right? And so Hannah answers first. He's like, he spent 20 minutes explaining cryptocurrency right in the beginning of the date, and I just was not interested, And so and then Chris kind of nods, like, yeah, that sounds terrible, It's like, that's rough, man, And so they're all kind of, and Mia says, well, what about you, And then and then Jake, he says that to Jake, right? So Mia asks Jake, well, what about you? And Jake says, well, I apparently got rejected within the first 30 seconds of meeting a group of people today. And Olivia kind of leads back. She goes, well, I mean, you're here still. I wouldn't call it a rejection. Like, well, what would you call it? I don't know that I'd call it that either. So what do you think you would call it? And she's like, quality control. And so Jake looks at her impressed and goes, I respect your commitment to quality. And she just kind of shrugs it off and and says, well, some people make terrible first impressions. And he goes, yeah, and sometimes those impressions are wrong. And then she just kind of smiles and says, well, yeah, sometimes they are. And he goes, again, we're making progress, aren't we? And she's like, okay, barely. She won't give it to him yet. So now they're hanging out. Now this whole group is hanging out, and they start wandering around through the festival together. They're sampling foods or watching local bands, and and so they're having fun, right? And then there's a little they had a little game that was going on where a little competitive game, and Olivia challenged Jake in the game and ended up kind of beating him at something, right? And he just kind of took it humorously, didn't get defensive or whatever, and wasn't like a bad sport. It was none of those things, right? He was very confident in his frame with this girl. There was nothing she could do that would phase him, it seemed, right? So Olivia cannot phase Jake no matter what she did. And she wasn't being disrespectful, but just very shit testy, right? And so then, later on it, as they're, she joked around and said, well, you probably practice talking to strangers in the mirror, don't you? And he's like, yeah, I think, and I need more practice. Look at how that went today. It's so terrible, right? And he's like, but at least, the mirror doesn't reject me as creatively as you, though. So hats off to you. And so she's kind of laughing. She says, well, I do admit you're pretty funny. He's like, I know. And she's like, don't let it get to your head, right? And he's like, yeah, don't let it get to your head. This is just being stupid, right? And then as they kind of continue to go along, they end up sort of isolating. So Chris kind of wanders off with Hannah and Mia, and Olivia sort of grabs Jake's hand and he's like, hey, come with me for a second. She pulls him over to something to go look at, right? And then they're over by the water, so they're over by a kind of a pathway where you could sort of hang out or whatever over the water. And so Olivia sort of separated him from the group at that point, says, come with me. And then she's like, well, okay. So, and she's like, kind of looking a little nervous. She's like, what? Okay, my first impression of you was a bit wrong. And Jake smiled and said, I know. And she's like, oh, you know? And he's like, yeah, you were way too confident about that first impression. That usually means it's going to be wrong. And so then she laughed. She's like, you always have these outrageous answers. She's like, yeah, but they're always accurate. And so then she looks at him for a second, and but you didn't seem bothered by anything I said or whatever. He's like, what? By what? I mean, okay, I was being kind of a bitch. He shrugged and said, well, I can handle you. So I don't think you need to be worrying about that. She's like, oh. And he's like, it's not like you're trying to, hurt people or something. You just have to, you're just testing. That's all. And she's like, okay, well, what am I testing for? He's like, well, you're testing to see if, this is, if I'm somebody that you would like to get to know a little bit better. And getting defensive or getting butthurt or mad would be the worst possible response. And acting in that way, like probably a lot of guys act, that would just mean that I couldn't handle you, right? And so she kind of smiles. And so instead you decide to make dumb jokes and make me laugh? He goes, yeah, because that seemed like a lot more fun. So even if it didn't work out, I had fun laughing at my own jokes, and then I got to enjoy a couple craft beers and maybe some tacos. So they end up wandering back over to the group, and they're kind of in that, they walk over, the guys walk the girls like back to where their car is parked. And Hannah claps her hands, says, well, we're going to call it a night. And Chris, kind of like, all right, like cool. And he's like, and think about how he closed this. So Jake, as she's saying that, Jake and Olivia now are kind of in their little bubble now. So they kind of have bubbled off almost like an item, even though they're all together. If you were to observe from the outside, it would look like those two seem to be next to each other a lot. Those two are bantering a lot. Those two are having more private conversations within the greater conversation of the group more, right? So they're starting to become a bit more of a frame. And Olivia's guard is just coming down and further and further and further to a point where she had initiated that isolation when she grabbed his hand and they moved away from the rest of the group for a minute, right? And so he goes, Jake looks at Olivia and goes, yeah, I was thinking. And he looks at her and goes, there's a rooftop bar a few blocks away. And she kind of smiles, just like, he's like, I heard it was good. She's like, no, you haven't. He goes, no, I absolutely haven't. Let's go. Let's go anyway. So she kind of laughs or whatever. And she's like, well, okay, but because so all the girls drove separate and parked in the same lot, right? So like she's like, well, but I drove, or did you guys drive together? He's like, yeah, Chris drove, so you have to drive me home. Let's go. It's like, okay. And so Chris is like, kind of just grinned at him, like knowing what's up. He's like, all right, bro, I'll see you tomorrow. So now the girls break off and Chris, the friend, leaves. He's now on it. Now he's alone with this chick, and they decide to go to this rooftop bar. Olivia and Jake now are alone, and they're going to have a drink together and have a night. So this whole thing is now turned into a bit of we could call it an Insta date, right? And, the girls had a little conversation like, you sure you're going to be all right or whatever? Text me later. They did all that thing. And now they're hanging out. So they're at this little rooftop bar, and Olivia's like, I owe you an apology. And he's like, you do? He's like, no, but seriously, what do you mean? He's like, well, I was being a bitch earlier. She's like, yeah, you were, but who cares? You recovered. And she smiled and is like, I never do this. I never warm up to people like this quickly or whatever. And she's like, yeah, well, what do you think changed? She's like, I don't know. You didn't care. You didn't try to prove yourself to me or whatever. And he just leans back. He's like, yeah, well, again, I figured you'd like me eventually. And then she's just like rolls her eyes and she laughs. And then she kind of moves. She now moves in closer. And now they're sort of together now. Now they're sort of, sort of touching or whatever. And they're close. And so they end up, as they're talking, she ends up just like leaning in and she ends up kissing him. And so now they're making out at the rooftop bar for a little bit. And she's just like, then they break, and he's kind of like looks, and she's like, so, and he's like, so, and she's like, I was completely wrong about you. And she's like, yeah, it happens. And she's like, I thought you were just another guy trying hard, another dickhead or whatever. And, she's like, yeah. And he's like, but shoot, you weren't really trying. You're not trying hard at all. She's like, well, and he says, well, two people are meant to connect well. It should be pretty effortless, don't you think? She's like, yeah. And then they start making out again, right? And then she's like, well, what now? And then he's like, well, I don't think our night's over yet. Why don't we get the fuck out of here? She's like, yeah, that sounds good. And so then they leave that rooftop bar. They go over she drives over to Jake's place, and they hook up that night. And that was a nice first night hookup off of an instant date. So there is story number 2. Okay. Fucking Peter, dude, that's funny. I know. Well, not all white people. Some of us white people were pretty good with that sarcastic flirting, man. Definitely. So yeah. So that was pretty good stories there. And I think I made the good game points. Hopefully you guys followed those pretty well, and you can hear, again, these are both true stories. And hopefully you can sort of hear and see what's going on there, both overt communication as well as the covert, subtle communication that's happening between the people, between everybody involved. And hopefully you can see how the guys in those scenarios held frame, had confidence, moved things along effortlessly, right? Handled the girls' banter and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And it was like the guys had these magnets and just drew the girl in and drew her closer until, you know what I mean? She just felt like she was in that bubble with that guy and in that frame with that guy. It's like first day meeting, and it's so impactful. This is a love story for the girl. You got to figure, okay, like we kind of joke around, and it is true, but a lot of women, I'd say most women, probably all women really have main character syndrome to some degree, particularly when it comes to their romantic lives. And that's okay. It's not a criticism. Okay. But they have main character syndrome. They all want a love story. They want a story this is why they like watching romantic comedies. This is why they like watching the dumb reality shows where people meet and hook up and it's super contrived and you know what I mean? Whatever. But it's as much bullshit as a lot of that stuff can be. That's what they want. A woman wants a love story. So if you're trying to develop really positive experiences in your dating life, you got to be able to create that love story. And you create that story by leading somebody along through these experiences and doing it fearlessly. You know what I mean? And not worried about your fucking selves. Oh, what if she rejects me? Fucking cares, dude. Who cares? You know what I mean? It's so you just go. You just do it. You just go. You learn the skills and you go. And Peter mentioned, like our sarcastic flirting, but you know what? That's a skill set that you train, you learn it. All the stuff I teaches a dude how to do that. Right. And if you don't know how, or you're not good at it, or if you're awkward or whatever, or you're just not getting results, you can learn it. You know what I mean? I've had lots of guys who fucking were very awkward, turn that completely around. And in these stories, like, not everybody's, they're not all like these super chads. They're not the meme of some chad or whatever, the fuck that fucks everyone's girl, the chad or the Tyrone that's out there banging all the chicks and gives you, and you end up with the leftovers, that whole black pill nonsense. That's not how real life works, man. That's not real life. These stories, that's real life. That's how people connect. What are some of the similarities you notice? What are some of the differences, right? But if you don't get out there, if you don't approach, if you don't learn how to hold these conversations, if you don't learn how to have clever ways of initiating discussion, telling stories, asking questions, responding, bantering, moving things along. Yeah, a girl might bury herself in her phone when she's in front of you because she's bored, because you're boring, because you're not good at this stuff. It's not because you're a bad guy, and it's not because you're actually a boring person. It's just that maybe you're not as good at communicating and having charisma as you would like or as you think you do, right? And so you have to develop these skills, and hopefully these little anecdotes will give you some ideas and help you do that. I'm going to go through some of these comments here. Perusing through. What do you guys think so far? Let me know in the chat right now what you guys are thinking. All right. And so let's see. Thanks for the compliments earlier in the chat. I appreciate that. Some of these comments are retarded. That's too bad. So I don't know why people do that. You guys need to get out and touch grass. Yeah. So why should a guy keep trying if he's not in the top 20%? Well, first of all, what the fuck does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? First of all, top 20% of what? Top 20% of men, but in what? In money, in fucking height, in bench press stats, you know what I mean? In, SAT or ACT tests or IQ. Like what does that mean? Because I'll tell you what, girls aren't fucking responding to that shit. And they don't care. They want a guy who's going to fuck them and make them happy. So stop worrying about it. Okay. You make yourself better as a man. And if those of you guys, who follow John and understand money, muscles, frame, game, right? That's a good way of looking at it. You're going to make that stuff better. You're going to get a better health, better physique, work on your appearance, work on your money, work on your goals as a man and like the impact you make in the world and doing what satisfies you and makes you happy, but not just happy like in a hedonistic way necessarily, but fulfilled. You know what I mean? You're looking for fulfillment by feeling like you're offering value to the world and value to yourself. These are all things you should do, and that has nothing to do with women, right? But even the sex, and I'm talking about the sexual psychology course that it's going to drop next month towards the end of the month. Like having great sex is about your experiences, not just about hers. So you do these things for you, but there's plenty of pretty girls out there, and it doesn't fucking matter. This is internet thinking. This is just internet bullshit. When you go and talk to a fucking girl, she's not going, is he the top 20%? She's not doing that. She's just responding to the experience she's having in that moment. And you just learn how to create good experiences. This here, your inner game is fucked and you have low self-esteem if you're asking that question. Girls don't fuck a guy's wallet. They don't fuck a guy's height. You know what I mean? They don't fuck a guy's, whether or not he's the best karate fighter in the world or the best chess player. You know what I mean? They don't fuck those things. Okay. They fuck you, and they fuck you based on how they feel. And that's it. It's really that simple, man. You make them feel good because you fucking feel good, because you're doing you do the things that make you feel good, and then you make women feel good by elevating them to go feel good with you. You know what they're going to do? They're going to have sex with you. That's what's going to happen. And then you might get a girlfriend out of the deal. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about this shit. Again, I'm not saying don't make yourself better, but 20%, or am I in the top 10% or 1%? I don't give a fuck, dude, what percent I am as a guy right now. That thought never fucking crosses my mind of what percentage I am in terms of men. Okay, well, I shouldn't say that. It has, when the conversation has happened in the space I'm in, I've thought about it then for like and done some math, then you know what? Forget about it, because it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't make me feel good in the morning. It doesn't doesn't make my workout better. It doesn't make me fuck better. It doesn't make me happier. It doesn't make me get more business or invest my money properly. None of that shit fucking matters, dude. What matters is you make yourself better and you have frame and charisma and you learn the game skills to talk to girls and to make girls feel good. So they like being with you. That's it. That's all that matters. You know what I mean? You got to retrain the way you think. The internet has poisoned some of your brains. All right. And I'm a coach, right? And I'm also a non-commissioned officer in the military. So I'm being a dickhead to a lot of you guys because that's what I do to make you better, right? I'm being a fraction of a dickhead. All right. I can really pile on and be a super drill sergeant style asshole if I want to be. Okay. Some of you guys might need that, but that's, so don't be offended if you don't like my tone of voice. It's for your betterment. And I appreciate the comment too. I'm not shitting all over you. Okay. But I'm just saying, wrong way of thinking, totally wrong. Right. Cause it doesn't matter. Girls will sleep with anything. Haven't you fucking realized that? Look around you. And even the hot ones, they sleep with drug addicts. They sleep with fucking weird losers. They sleep with some guy at the club they met, DJs. You know what I mean? Like, fuck. And you're wondering about being the top 20%. They don't even sleep with the top 20%. When they're young and hot and out there experiencing the world, they're not measuring a guy to see whether he's in the top 20%. They're just fucking dudes that make them feel happy. And so that's it. You know what I'm saying? That's it. Dude, you don't need to make it. You don't need to get in this stuff. This is poison, dude. It's poison to your brain. You got to change your fucking inner way of thinking, the way that you see yourself. All right. And this is a good comment here. A good lover is very hard to find for women. It's the real 0.01% of, yeah, dude, it is. And that's why this course is so important that I'm going to host. And it's unlike anything you've ever seen. I promise you that. This is the sexual psychology course I'm going to have out is unlike anything you've ever seen or heard of. All right. And it's all very real and based in research. I just can't. I'm the only thing I'm struggling with right now is how to illustrate what I'm saying to, considering most guys haven't experienced what I'm saying, but you can learn and you will experience it if you take my course, and do what I say in the course. Don't just passively watch it, not do anything. But if you train and do it, I mean, it's so hard to describe, like, without sounding like I'm bullshitting. You know what I mean? Because it sounds unreal to guys. Like, you mean like I can dickmatize a girl to a point where she questions her whole life and just wants to be with me and is willing to drop everything? Yes, you absolutely can. And you have to be careful about that too. And how you approach that. So you do it ethically. That'll be your new problem to solve. But yes, and the how and the actual experience, like, fuck, dude, you guys don't even know what you're in for, man. I can't wait. It's going to be a good time. Let's keep going here. All right. I'm looking for some useful comments. Seeing some questions. I already answered that one from the super. Oh, here was one. Second super. Sorry, I almost missed you there, Mr. G Money. Paul should set time aside to do the full Insta date. Oh, should a busy guy set his time aside? This is a good question. Should a busy guy, and thank you for the super chat, by the way, I appreciate it. Should a busy guy set aside time to do the full Insta date, close, and drop her off? I've rushed dates because of other commitments or just number closed. Yeah, so you won't always be able to do an Insta date, right? Because, But there's a couple things here. All right. One thing is, and I noticed this too when I was more in like my business, I guess you could say, was a bit more I guess you could say more conventional, right? When I was when I was in the real estate world and some of those things. And, you know, there's a lot of people who like to act busy. Um, and they're really just poor at time management. You know what I mean? So like they're the ones who would talk loud. The kind of guy, and I'm not saying you're this guy, but the kind of guy that would talk loudly on a Bluetooth when he's walking through the store, like he's so fucking important, right? Or the kind of guy who's always like, oh, I'm so busy and busy doing stuff, make things happen, right? That type of person. That's a very low level guy. You know what I mean? Who's trying to make it, but he doesn't really understand what he's fucking doing. He's not managing his time well. He's not being present. And he thinks he looks cool, like he's busy and making things happen. But he really isn't. You know what I mean? He's really probably behind on most things and suffering for it, to include financially. I've noticed that guys who make real money and who have, a lot going for them in their schedule know how to compartmentalize their time and know how to protect their free time too. So like a guy who, some of the guys who made between $500,000 and $1 million a year, a lot of times in the mortgage industry or in the, the insurance industry and in the real estate industry, they were busy. And when they were working, but when they were off, they were off. Do you know what I mean? And they have commitments and they have stuff, but they know how to protect their time. They know how to say no, and they know how to take their free time, and they know how to be spontaneous. Now, not every single one of them. All right. Some of them have inner game problems. And ironically, a lot of those guys coached with me to solve the inner game problems. Because remember, I'm a performance psychologist, not just a dating coach. Right. So like I've helped a lot of those guys perform better, but that's, here nor there. Right. So like, that's first thing is that, like, don't be that guy who acts like he's busy all the time. And I'm not saying that's you, but I'm just saying, in general, right? Now that said, you won't always be able to do an Insta date. Maybe you're just grabbing a cup of coffee and you really do have a meeting in 10 minutes. Well, okay. Then just close and get the number, right? I mean, that's what you'll do instead. But if you have time, and I recommend going out where you have flexible time, then you can turn things into an Insta date. What if you turn things, you don't have to rush anything, in the first story, for example, where they met at the coffee place, if that guy had somewhere to be, he could have ended that Insta date after enjoying a cinnamon roll with her in a cup of coffee 20 minutes later, and then said, I'd actually like to continue this with you, but unfortunately I got a meeting with one of my physical therapy clients. What are you doing later today? He could have done that and then just been like, why don't we go continue this later on? I'll do my thing and you can do a couple of things and maybe we'll change our outfits, do a little costume change and go grab dinner or go grab a drink. And at that point you could say dinner, you don't have to necessarily 5-star restaurant it, but you could say dinner or drinks later because you've already spent a fair amount of time and it's going really well. So it's already like you've had that first date, that first coffee date is basically already happening, right? So you could, in theory, and I've had plenty of successful go arounds that way myself. And so have a lot of people that are really good at game that are my clients, they start off that Insta date, but like, they really they don't have enough time to really continue. So they just say, well, what are you doing later? Do you know what I mean? Or what are you doing tomorrow? And they just set it up right then. And that's really successful because a lot of the dating coach advice out there is way out of date. You know what I mean? It's for guys who are not actually out there doing it or directly dealing with people who are doing it. So what ends up happening is it's like, oh, well, like you get the phone number and you set up a date a week later and shit, right? Like, dude, pretty girls fucking are flakier now more than ever. That doesn't make them bad choices. It just means when it comes to dating, they're flaky. And sometimes you got to move quickly. That's a big difference than 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying you can't make a date work a week later, but idealistically, you strike when the iron is hot now. But there's a way to do that without looking desperate or looking like you just got nothing to do. You know what I mean? And it's all about your confidence in the way that you present that. You're not acting like a guy who's just bored with nothing to do. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, you're not afraid. You're not trying to play games. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, let's go get something next week, and letting like weeks and days go by. Like a lot of guys are doing that because they're fucking scared. You know what I mean? And so if it's going well, see if she can continue. I'm not saying being desperate about it, but just be like, well, what are you doing later? You know what I mean? And she might be like, oh, I got plans later or something. Let's say it is a Saturday. Be like, all right, cool. You know, well, you enjoy your plans. Maybe we'll do something, you know, that's fine. You just defer to something else. But you could say, and you could be like, you know, I have things going on, but I can be flexible too. So I want to see if you wanted to blank, right? Wanted to go grab a bite to eat or something before I do my other plans, you know, or something like that, right? Maybe you cancel your other plans then. And so you get what I'm saying? Like you don't be afraid to move quickly, I guess. But if you can't have an Insta date, you don't have one. You do. And the whole thing about an Insta date is it's unplanned. So you deal with the time that you have. You might not have 4 hours. You might only have that 20 or 30 minutes, but 20 or 30 minutes of having a cup of coffee with somebody and making a strong impact on her, you know, her instinctual brain that makes sexual decisions. Isn't that a lot better than just a cold approach where you get a phone number and break contact because, you know, you're not sure what to do next, right? That's way better. You know what I mean? Still way better, even if you have to cut it short. And sometimes cutting it short, by the way, is good anyway. You know what I mean? You get her on an emotional high and then you break contact. Well, you know what? This is actually a lot of fun, but unfortunately I do have an appointment at this time and I can't change it. So I got to go. And then she's feeling like, oh, like I want more of this guy. You know what I mean? Instead of dragging something on or whatever. Right. So that's good. I wouldn't worry too much about that, you know, about how much time you have to set aside. You deal with the amount of time you got, if that makes sense. All right. All right, Eric. A dude has opened a couple minutes in. He says something funny. She gives an exaggerated laugh as she leans forward to touch his upper arm. All right. That's a good anecdote. Thanks for the Superman. So hope you're doing well, bro. Oh shit, 20 bucks. Man, you're the man. Thank you. I appreciate it. So read this one. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so we're going to just stay away from that. Thank you again, though, for the Superman. This is great. So I'm super nervous when it comes to cold approach. When I've done it, I've gotten great results. Right. All right. So keep doing it. Instant dates, etc. Should I work on my inner game and take some time off and not focus on trying to approach if I can't right now? No, dude. Just work on your inner game while you're taking action. That is the best way to do it. Don't pull off and then say, well, I'm just going to work on my inner game like a hermit going to the mountaintop. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a meditation retreat. Trust me, I host mindset weekends for my group. So there's nothing wrong with that stuff. But the thing is, we want to operate in the objective world. We don't want to just separate ourselves from the objective world. You know what I mean? Because then that's not going to get us results. And there's too much of that today. There's too much. Well, I'm going to take myself out of taking action to get more information. And so somebody will binge watch YouTube for 3 months instead of taking action. Listen, your action doesn't mean it. Your knowledge doesn't mean anything without action, because your understanding of, let's say, what I say, for example, will make sense on a different level when you're actually out approaching and meeting women. You know what I mean? Um, and you've gotten good results, which is great. You probably also have gotten results that weren't good or rejections, which is good too, because you'll learn from those. You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, that's what you need to do. You need to keep taking action and then working on your inner game while you're doing it. So jump over to school too if you're not in the school community. But you have to, what I recommend you guys do is it's just like having a workout plan. You have an inner game plan for yourself. You have an inner game program that you're doing where you're doing something small every day for your mental and spiritual health, right? And if you are a theist like I am, spiritual health is important, right? If you're not a theist and don't have those beliefs, that's fine. Then your mental and emotional health is better than, well, not better, but is better than nothing. We'll put it like that, right? And so you need to work on that on a daily, and you'll improve your approaches and your results when you're working on that. Now, what to do to work on it though? How do you work on reducing that anxiety? How do you work on changing a mental framework so that you get better internally when you're taking action instead of getting worse? That's the question. You got to do the right things for your inner game. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time in the show for me to even give that to you. But you can go to school and ask the question. And I have courses on it as well. And people in my mastermind group are or should be working on their inner game on a weekly basis, along with their goals and their other actions. And so that's a place where I can train you on actually how to. Do you know what I'm saying? But like, I just highly recommend that you take the action along with the inner game work. Don't just do one or the other. It's not a binary thing. You can do both. It's best if you do both at the same time. It's best if you're doing things that are challenging for you while you're also working on your inner game. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't take, like I said, a break for a weekend to do a mindset retreat or something of that nature, but don't be like, oh, I'm not going to cold approach for the next 90 days to work on my inner game. Listen, the only exception to that would be if you went through a serious, tough breakup and you're still hung up on it and broken up on it and you've got trauma from it and those sorts of things. Like if there's like serious trauma, particularly breakup stuff, or if you're dealing with like a serious thing like drug addiction or something crazy, where you got to focus all your energy into that instead of women, by all means, go ahead and do that. But that's not what you're expressing here. And so like, if it's just in general, I have approach anxiety and so I need to work on my inner game. Should I not do approaches? Well, no, the answer is absolutely do the approaches. And as this guy says right here, all right. And you said, well, damn, but I'm just beating myself up so badly. I feel like I should work. No, see, this is cope though. And I'm not, no offense. It just is. It's cope, man. We will come up, especially us men, we will come up with the most creative ways of thinking to avoid doing the exact things that we should be doing. I see it every fucking day. It's mind numbing. And it's even worse when I do it myself. Because I'm a human being, right? So occasionally I get caught, I catch myself. I'm like, damn it. You know what I mean? We will come up with the most creative stories that we will tell ourselves to not fucking do what we're supposed to. Listen, pain is good. Okay? Pain is good because it means that you have a stimulus to allow yourself to improve. Pain is something that to go through that pain makes you stronger. Okay. If I go to the gym and I lift stuff, and if I don't feel any pain at all, I'm probably not lifting hard enough, right? Pain is good if it is the right kind of pain and it's the kind that makes you improve, right? And so if you're stuck on this and not getting any better, okay, that's again, I don't see a post on school from you. All right. So that's where you need to be. And you need to post something. You need to DM me. We need to figure something out. Okay. Because you can get through this for sure. All right, cool. And then we got another super. Appreciate these. I've been doing my storytelling. I haven't been looking at my chats until now. Okay. Do women find a man who has his own house more attractive versus a man who lives at home with his parents? Yes, of course. Absolutely. Um, does having your own place make you stand out from other men? Yeah, 100%. Now there's more of an expectation of something like having your own place is more of an expectation on you based on your dating market and who you're dating and where you're at. Like, so for example, if I'm a 48-year-old man and I live with my parents and I'm not the one paying all the bills and taking care of those parents, I'm instead living off of them. That is extremely unattractive, right? But if you're 19 years old and you live with your parents, it's not a big deal. You see what I'm saying? So it does depend on what expectations are on you based on your place in life. That being said, I've been between deployments and left a relationship and left the place I was living at and just kind of camped out in my car, was kind of voluntarily homeless for a couple of months, slaying fucking women. All right. Casual dating and getting laid didn't stop me, didn't matter, right? Whether or not I had a fucking place or not. And I was in my 30s doing that shit. So like, I'm not saying you should do that. You know what I mean? I was a little bit of a crazy person for different parts of my life. So I'm not saying you do that, right? But once again, it kind of comes down to the experience a girl is having with you. All right. At whether or not she continues with you or makes you into a long-term relationship, that remains to be seen. But whether or not she sleeps with you, has a date with you, has fun with you, all those things, that's all about the experience that she's having in the moment. Do you know what I mean? Dude, women sleep with fucking bus boys in Greece or in Brazil and shit who got nothing going for them on a girl's vacation. You know what I mean? Like they will, right? I mean, again, look around you and look at the dudes women in general sleep with. Okay, they're not all top tier guys with all their shit together. That's a fucking myth. They sleep with they sleep with a bartender who lives with a roommate in a fucking apartment that he's behind on the rent. You know what I mean? They sleep with that fucking guy, who lives in a trailer or some shit. You know what I mean? And I'm not just talking ugly fat chicks. Hot women do it too, all the fucking time. Why? Because in the moment and in the experience, she's having a great time. And that's what matters. So I'm not saying don't get your own place and be your own man and all that shit. That's a man discussion. Yeah, you need to do those things as a man and improve yourself as a man, but you're not doing that to get laid. You're not doing that for women. You don't have to. You just don't have to. You literally can get laid when you have the right behaviors pretty much in any status that you're in. And you see it all the time. All right. So don't get caught up in some of those things. But is it more attractive? Yeah, of course it's more attractive. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean just because something is more attractive, that doesn't mean you can't make a girl feel excited about you and want to go home with you. Well, your parents' home or her home. You know what I mean? Back when I was that stint of being like that little homeless experiment I did. And again, I had some money. I could have gotten into a place, but I just said, fuck it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be a nomad right now. All right, cool. You know what I mean? Well, I was sleeping in short order. I was staying at girls' houses, and then I realized I was being a complete dirtbag and I needed to turn that around and probably get my own thing going. Right. And then I ended up doing that, but like I was just sleeping and staying with different women, and I'm not saying that as saying you need to do that. That's the goal. Of course not. But I'm just saying and none of these women were unattractive. They're all very hot. And so it's like, that's why the crazy shit, man, that people, I'm not saying you, but like people fucking on the internet, the stupid things people say. It's like, dude, you guys just don't fuck girls very often. And I can tell, you know what I mean? Women respond to whatever, dude. And I'm not saying you don't fuck girls or whatever. I'm not saying that about you. All right. This is a great question. But I wouldn't get caught. I wouldn't get hung up on it. I would, though, for your own mental health and well-being, especially if you're in someplace like the United States, what I would do is be autonomous. So don't, put yourself in a place where you're not reliant on anybody just because the world is so fucked and you need to create your own oasis. Do you know what I mean? Away from everybody. And that means even if it's just a small apartment or something like that, you need to have your own space and your own autonomy just for your own inner game and mental health. It changes everything when you have that. All right. So I really urge you to get that for yourself. And that has nothing to do with the women though, so we'll keep going. Truth though, you could if you want to, right? Depends on where you're at. Put your hand over her mouth. You know what I'm saying? A lot of things can happen. I'm not saying as a predator, of course, consensual sex, of course. Put your hand over her mouth when she's making her fun noises. You know what I mean? It's totally fine. If he's a young guy, he's broke right now or in a transition, lives with his parents, fuck it. Who cares? But I mean, that shouldn't be the permanent state though, right? And so that's it, and yes, appreciate you, man. I'm glad you will. I'm glad you will. I'll see you over there for sure. The timing's good because in a week or so, I'm going to start charging for it for the new guys. All right. Cool. Well, that about does it. All right. Hopefully you guys like the stories. I'll get better at my storytelling. It was a last minute decision today to do that. But let me know in the comments, right? And let me know even in the chat before we close, are stories like that good to learn from? Do you like hearing those stories and you want me to do more of that? If you do, I got thousands of them. And so I can do stories with lessons on field reports, everything from pickup to dudes getting laid to, also relationship related issues too, and things that people struggle with there. And so you just let me know. I'm here to help you. Great stream today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you guys for tuning in. And that said, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. All right. Take care.